Some of you may be familiar with the sporadic structure, the Kabbalistic mystical structure, what we call the emotional spectrum, both on a cosmic level and on a personal level. 7 emotions. Structure of 7, the cycle of 7, 7 days of the week. The 7 emotions, namely, I'll say them in Hebrew and translate them into English. Chesed, loving kindness. Gvura, discipline. Tiferet, compassion. Netzach, determination, ambition. Hod, humility, yielding. Yesod, foundation, bonding. And Malchut, dignity. And indeed, in this time period, the Jewish calendar, which is between the 2 holidays of Passover and Shavuot, we count 49 days, which is 7 times 7, these 7 emotions. Each one encompasses within them the 7. Some of you may also be familiar with a book I've written called The Spiritual Guide to Counting the Omer, which is also an app, My Omer. Check it out, a My Omer free app, which is essentially a journey of personal and character development, of going through these 7 emotions and evaluating, probing, diagnosing each one of these emotions within us, our love, our discipline, our compassion, and then within each one of them, the love within love, the discipline within love, the compassion within love. Check it out. I think you'll find it quite fascinating. It's like an X-ray of your soul, an X-ray especially of your emotional psyche. So we are now in the week of compassion. Compassion is a very fascinating and powerful, you can call it faculty, emotion. What is compassion? We know love. Love is also, of course, very powerful. But compassion is somewhat different than love. Compassion, others can translate it as mercy. I prefer compassion, is the sense of empathy that you have. Today, there's the concept you've heard of, I'm sure, the mirror neurons. Classic example, you see, God forbid, somebody's about to slam a door or close a trunk on their fingers. So even though you're a distance away, you're not feeling it, you may wince in pain. You're mirroring the neurons of the person in that situation. You're empathizing with them. What does that tell us? That we human beings have the capacity, as much as we are driven by self-interest, and our lives are orbited around our egos. You know the classic joke about that. 2 guys go camping at night. Middle of the night, one of them wakes up and he hears a bear scurrying about. So he wakes up his friend and says, "We have to get out of here." And while he's doing that, he's tying the shoelaces of his sneakers. And his friend says to him, "You think you can outrun the bear?" He says, "No, all I have to do is outrun..." I guess the joke is not so well received somewhere. He says, "Oh, you think you think you can outrun the bear?" He said, "No, all I have to do is outrun you." That's essentially dog eats dog, survival of the fittest attitude, where life orbits around me and my needs. But despite that, we have the capacity, as mirror neurons clearly demonstrate, to feel another's pain, another's joy. How is that possible? I'm here, someone else is a distance away, but I'm seeing them experience something and I can feel their experience as if it's happening to me. Is it exactly the same thing? No, but it is an element that teaches us there's something more going on than just our separate entities. None of us are an island unto ourselves. Now, when you're familiar with physics, especially quantum mechanics, understanding that there's an integral unity that bonds and connects literally every atom in all of existence, billions and billions and trillions of miles away, not fully understood, different theories, string theory, other theories that try to explain it all, you come to realize this, everything is really like all connected by like an invisible quilt. Think of an invisible quilt, and everything's on that quilt. So when you vibrate the quilt on one corner, it affects what sometimes is known as the butterfly effect. That the a butterfly flapping its wings in Kansas City can create a typhoon in Singapore. So there's some type of inherent and integral unity that connects us all. And that's the essence of empathy and compassion. So compassion has this power to transcend ourselves. But we have to allow it, obviously, to manifest. If a person is completely consumed with themselves, they're not even going to look at another person in joy or in pain, and therefore not empathize with them. So there has to be that openness. In other words, being selfish and completely self-consumed can't close us off to be blinded to others. But if you don't do that, and you allow your eyes to see, you allow your ears to hear, you allow yourself to be sensitive to the vibes around you, there's a connection between all of us, and compassion reveals that connection. So what they say is, to err is human, to forgive is divine. Why? Because human beings are flawed, so we'll all make our mistakes. But to forgive means that you're not a victim to your mistakes or to others. It means the ability to transcend even circumstances. Now, some situations, some people rather, when they are insulted, they carry it a long time, maybe a lifetime. And they close themselves off. But forgiveness allows you to transcend and say, I'm not going to be defined by my experiences. I'll learn from them. I'll grow through them. But I'm not going to be defined by them. The ability to transcend ourselves. It reminds me of a similar explanation when we describe, in the mystical language, we describe the different types of species that there are. We speak about 4 kingdoms: the mineral, the inanimate, the vegetation, the vegetable world or kingdom, the animal, and the human. But the human is described, interestingly, by the Arizal, the great mystic of the 16th century, where he describes it as the speaker. The human is compared to the speaker. What is speech? Speech, too, is a transcendent element, because it means you can speak to another. Imagine we couldn't speak to each other. So it's true that in the animal kingdom, they also communicate with each other in different ways. We know today that even in the world of vegetation, that is, think of cross-pollination, or pollination in general. And based on what I said earlier about quantum mechanics, there's a language that all existence, even completely mineral, inanimate, and organic matter, can communicate with each other. But the actual ability for me to come over to you and say, I'd like to ask you something. I'd like to ask you to forgive me. I'd like to ask you to care for me. I like to care for you, is essentially the transcendent element that allows a person to get out of their self-contained ego. And that is why compassion is connected to another concept, which is called the middle rod. I'll explain what that is. We have a human being, a healthy human being, has a right, left, and center. The spine. What would a person be like if we didn't have that middle spine? You could have the whole body intact, but you wouldn't have the centrifugal, you wouldn't have the balance, the equilibrium. So actually in the temple, the holy temple, it was said when they built, especially the sanctuary, the temporary sanctuary, when they traveled through the wilderness, it says that the walls were connected, one wall to other, with these like clasps. But then there was one central, with rods, essentially, that connected one wall to the next. But then there was one central rod that ran through from one end to the other. So the mystics explain that compassion, Tiferet in Hebrew, runs from one end to the other. So there are things that hold two pieces in place locally. But then there are elements in our lives that are universal, that are consistent, like the spine that runs all the way from the brain all the way down the back, that creates a type of equilibrium, quite a balance. And compassion goes into that category. That means compassion truly runs through the entire system, where other attributes will only be focused on one particular locality. Again, emphasizing the concept of transcending just one local place, but encompassing it all. But compassion itself can be quite challenging. Because what is compassion? What is compassion? And So, simple example, I remember giving a class about this. Some people say compassion is, feeling for another, showing compassion, empathy, being kind to others, especially those that may have less than you. But here's an interesting moral question. You're walking down the street. I live in New York. This is common. In different cities, you see a homeless person. So anyone that's with even a little compassion in their heart, their heart is going to go out to this person. And so they're asking for a few pennies. You throw them a coin or two. And you feel for them. Why don't you invite them to your home for dinner? Why don't you ask them if they need a job or a loan or something else? Why is compassion only enough to give? So many people will say, I don't have the time. I don't know who this person is. I'm not sure I trust them. But to throw them a coin or two, what do I have to lose? What about one day passes and you're very busy that day and you're really actually in a bad mood and you walk by and you see this person, they say, why don't they clean up the streets? What are they leaving these homeless people just loitering in the streets here? What happened to your compassion that day? Or you happen not to even to notice it because you're so busy. So what exactly does compassion consist of? Is it just another way of you relieving your conscience so you feel a little better and less guilt? Is that what it is? How far does compassion go? Should you take that person home? So I understand the issue of trust and so on. But some people don't want that person close to them. So what does compassion demand? And this is why you need to go through the process of seeing the love and compassion, the discipline and compassion, the compassion within compassion, the drive, the determination of compassion, the humility, because you want it to be a healthy compassion. Not just one that fits your whims and your moods when you're in the mood of it and when you're not. And to do what's right, not just what you like. And this is where compassion becomes not just a tool and an instrument of transcendence, but it actually becomes, yes, the voice of God or the echo of God echoing within you. That a human being can be something more than just human. So humanity, we may disagree on the standards, but humanity has certain form of ethics. Again, this has been debated, what exactly is ethical. For one person's ethics, another person is not ethical. Some people go farther. But it's still ultimately in the human domain. Now think of constitutional laws in a free society. So there's certain laws of respecting other people's life and their property and their freedoms and so on. But there's something what we call becoming divine. I said before, forgiveness is divine. Because humans, at the end of the day, it's going to be arbitrary. It will be subjective to some extent. How do you move to the divine when you transcend yourself? As long as it's an extension of you and your needs, including compassion, including love, it's still part of you. True love and true compassion is when you're able to go beyond yourself. And hence, that idea, that concept of a God within you. And it's a really, if you think about it, a beautiful, beautiful concept, because it's more than concept. It's about transforming yourself into something more than what is human and what is mortal and what is temporary. You can actually become a part of the immortal, of the eternal. And here is the word that I often introduce, and I will introduce again to some of you may have heard this word, maybe not. It's a Hebrew word very hard to translate into English accurately. It's called bittul. B-I-T-T-U-L would be the way it's transliterated. It's a combination of modesty, humility, but maybe the best way I define it is suspending yourself in face of a truth and reality greater than yourself. It's what happens when you stand in awe of a beautiful natural sight. It's what happens when you're transfixed and mesmerized by a song that transports you to another time and place. You lose a sense of yourself. It's what happens when you're absorbed in a book and you don't even realize you're turning pages. It's where the subject and object melt into one, meaning you the subject, meaning you the person, and it all becomes an experience that's greater than yourself. It's when artists or athletes or writers or others that speak about channeling. It's not me, I'm channeling. I'm in the zone, channeling something greater than myself. is the ultimate experience. You can't always put on a switch and trigger it, but you can get yourself in a place that often it begins to emerge. And when it does, it's something magical. Because you essentially you melt into the realities around you and you channel something greater than yourself. So when people have been searching for the fountain of youth, whether it's the pharaohs of old or modern day freezing of trying to create eternity, find immortality, it comes down to one principle. If you are pursuing it as an extension of you, no matter how great you are, there's going to be a ceiling. A glass ceiling or an actual ceiling. But if you're able to absorb, and you're able to become absorbed in a reality greater than yourself, then if that reality is eternal and immortal, you become an extension of it. That's the secret. So you can't have it both ways. You can't be me, me, me. It's all about me, and now I want immortality. No, if it's about you, then you're mortal, and it's maybe a big mortal, maybe one that extends for a period of time, but it's going to have an end. Everything that has a beginning has an end. But the bittul, and that's where compassion comes in, the ability to transcend yourself, feel, empathize with another, what it returns to you is eternity. That rod, that travels all the way to the highest and down to the lowest. That's eternity. It's not just real in one area, in one time, in one place. So someone may say, okay, well, then I'm doing it. It's another extension of me. I want to have eternity. No. The whole point of it is that it's true compassion. It's not another trick how to gain something greater than yourself. It's actually becoming part of something greater than yourself. Now, initially, maybe just like charity or other acts of love and kindness that people do because they have an ulterior motive, it may begin with that. But ultimately, the true experience is when do you become a channel to something greater, not when you want to, but when you give up, when you suspend, when you let go, when you commit, when you dedicate yourself. So it's a concept that is unfortunately become more and more foreign to our times. People today are busy building themselves, building equity, connections, more of me, acquiring acquisitions. And here, the key and the irony and the paradox is ultimately you become the greatest when you actually give, when you actually suspend, when you let go, and you allow yourself to draw down into your life something greater than yourself. And it begins with compassion. Compassion, that ability to empathize and feel another. It could be a small act. It could be a parent who stays up at night to care for a child that is in need. It could be a stranger that you help a special child or a special person because they just simply need something. Not because you're going to get something for it in return. What you're doing in all these cases is not just being nice, not just the right thing to do because someone's blessed, should share their blessings. Someone who has less, you should reach out to, be kind to. It returns something powerful to you, which is the transcendent element, is the truth. The truth of reality is that we are not self-contained entities, that there is a higher truth, that there is a higher, greater reality, and we become one with it through compassion, through empathy. And that's why our neurons mirror, because it's hardwired within us. If we allow ourselves to not be greedy and not be selfish, and to see outside of our own little box, that's when this magic happens. Reminds me of the difference between a pane of glass and a mirror. So when some middle-aged great scholar told a student of his that he saw a very fine student who was once a very compassionate individual, but then became wealthy, became very wealthy. And the wealthier he became, the more selfish he became. The less he allowed others into his life. But he loved mirrors. Mirrors. He had a collection of mirrors. So his great teacher once came to visit him and said to him, what's the difference between a mirror and a pane of glass? So of course, a pane of glass, a window, you look out, you see others. In a mirror, you see yourself. But what's the difference? Why did this pane of glass? A mirror is also a pane of glass. You smear silver on the back of the mirror. What do you end up seeing? Yourself. The silver blocks you from seeing through and through, from being transparent. Now that doesn't mean money can't be used for good causes, but it could also blind us and can make us self-contained and close us up. Compassion is a result of seeing others, another's pain, another's joy, celebrating with someone else, feeling for them, doing something that is not about you or an extension of you. And that is what unleashes, I would say, the infinite. It unleashes the eternal. It unleashes that integral connection that we all have. We sure need a lot of that today. With all our advancements in technology and medical breakthroughs, and that literally breathtaking, unprecedented innovations, they can become an extension of yourself, or they can be forces that you use to express compassion. You can do that easily. Today you can be compassionate to billions of people with a one press of a button. Send an email, a kind email to someone. So once upon a time, you could do it with one person, two people, a few people. You send out a letter. You could publish an article, publish a statement. Today you really can reach and transcend time and space with yet another force that transcends time and space, and that is the power of compassion. But we need to be deliberate about it. We need to make the effort, because we often gravitate to our comfort zones and we gravitate to ourselves and our own needs and interests. Try it out. In this week of compassion, let's make compassion a mainstay, a permanent feature in our lives. And you'll see what kind of doors and windows open up for you of blessings, abundant blessings, eternal blessings. Simon Jacobson, meaningfullife.com. Please take advantage of all our offerings. Subscribe to them. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, to our other platforms. Check out simonjacobson.ai, where you can have a virtual conversation with me or a chat. And please share. Sharing is like compassion, sharing with others. Pay it forward. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, your comments. And Simon Jacobson, meaningfullife.com. Thank you, and be well.